When students come to my office, we often talk about careers. And one theme is whether they should focus on one thing or focus on many. Hedge their bets, be a generalist, or go into one specific area. The traditional choice has been to go for one thing. Specialize, do it really well, and then become known for that. And later you can generalize, become a general manager, a general in the army, and whatever. Don't be a jack of all trades, master of none. However, I've begun to wonder whether that is good advice. In some respect, it still makes sense, but I'm trying to put this together so I'm relevant for my students. But first, if we try to understand the traditional specialist path, it starts with a passion. If you're born with a passion, or if you have it at early childhood, so you really know what you love to do, it's going to be very easy to practice it and really perhaps deliberately get good at it. Deliberate practice under the guidance of a mentor or a true expert in the area. And once you've practiced that for a while, you can perhaps profit at it or have a good career. So this makes intuitive sense, and I think that some people certainly fought hard to make this work for them. Like John Lennon lived with his Aunt Mimi, who said, well, the guitar is all very well, John, but you'll never make a living at it. So all respect if that's what you have. However, how deep should you go? And what if you don't know your passion? A lot of my students have been told by their parents what their passion is. And then after a while, they get bored, or their curiosity drives them elsewhere. In this era of attention deficit disorder, people really want to look at the next thing. So clearly it's merit to focus, but the question is, should everyone go deep in one little cave or canyon? And when should you stop? I think it's not for everyone to dive into one field, and perhaps they have to go up again and broaden their horizon. So if you're looking at the long tail of marketing, traditionally we have looked at the big fields at the head and said, go for plastics. There's a great future in plastics, Benjamin was told in the movie The Graduate. And perhaps that was good advice. It was a general field, a big field, specific to some extent. However, after a while it changes to perhaps computers, but it changes at a glacial pace. So perhaps you have time to adapt. Now, however, much of the future lies in the long tail. The long tail has been enabled by technology, so we can produce things much cheaper, we can distribute it much cheaper, and people can find us much more affordably. So we can actually have a wider tail and a thicker tail where we can thrive. However, those pursuits may not be for a career. We may have to jump or hedge our bets and be good at multiple things. The other thing being good at multiple things does is to allow us to see the connections between the two. And you may even be better at one thing that you do really well if you also know something else. You can be seen as creative because you get input, not just from other people in your field, and you also get a broader perspective on life. So the long tail of marketing allows you to be world-class in something. If you go far out enough, you can be the best in the world. So that's what I should tell my kids, right? Be the best in the world. But growing up in northern Sweden, that wasn't what you heard. People didn't talk about world-class unless it was a hockey player that made it to the NHL. Moving to Orange County, California, kindergarten, elementary school, middle school, high school, and now my university, all the bosses say, this is a world-class institution. Everyone has to be world-class because we're all better than average Joe, right? So this is easy for me to say to my kids, perhaps, but in fact, I struggled with this myself. Which one should I pick? And curiosity has often driven me sideways, sometimes at the expense of the rewards you can get as a specialist. Once I was challenged as a college initiation rite and engineering school in Sweden, they asked me to do whatever I wanted as long as I ended up on the front page of a newspaper. So after rejecting all the criminal ideas I immediately got, I thought that maybe if I and my friend who also got this challenge went to read the Guinness World Book of Records and we break a record, we can get the local newspaper to cover it and perhaps sign the certificate. Easy. Until we started browsing through that book, which was very difficult. Everything looked unbreakable until page 550 something in the Swedish edition, we saw this one we can break. And lo and behold, I became the world record holder for a while, drinking soda from the longest straw. 5.9 meters. You borrow this from your local burger joint and slice them together. And then this was, for a while, how I could shine. However, I quickly recognized that this was indeed an extremely narrow niche. It would also be very difficult to build a career as a master straw builder. So I put this back in the pocket and felt that perhaps I should question what I should focus on. But still struggling, is it really a trade-off? Do you have to sacrifice breadth if you go in for depth? And vice versa. Is it an either-or proposition? The good news is that I've discovered that this is not necessarily true. There is a rebirth of the Renaissance man. You go up there in the corner. You do a little bit of both. Perhaps not everything at a deep depth, but I think you can be a mile wide and almost a mile deep in some areas. You can speak with the best in the field, you can understand them, you can communicate, you can make the connections, and it would be almost dangerous to focus on one field alone. You may paint yourself into a career corner at a time when things change so rapidly, when it's also possible to learn much more quickly than ever before. It's your job, in your spare time perhaps, to do so-called self-directed learning. Even if you have a college degree, which I recommend still as a professor, you can go home, go to YouTube and learn almost anything and update your skills all the time. So if you can combine those two, I think there's an opportunity to shine. This choice, a lot of people are afraid, however, should I really do this or not? Still, as the Vikings said more than 1,000 years ago, the best lives are led by those that are brave and generous. And I think you have to be generous with your knowledge. You have to also be brave and take that leap of faith. And generosity is perhaps a key facet of the alternative model of expertise that I developed, or specialization, rather. Instead of starting with a passion that you may not know, try to find a purpose that you'd like to serve. Try to find a cause. It could be education, in my case. It could be democracy. It could be poverty alleviation, feed the hungry. It could be whatever drives you, quality of life for your neighbors. And then find who are you going to serve. So instead of defining yourself in terms of what you do, focus on who you serve. And what group of people would you like to commit to? And your expertise, your specialty, might be in having a keen sense of what they need at all times, so you can actually be a specialist in that area. It could last you a career. You follow them. And then you figure out and scramble on the back end, how can I serve them? How can I pay it forward? How can I be generous to them? How can I build a reputation as a giver? How can I then perhaps believe in the karma-like payback over time if you have proved yourself that you're passionate about serving them for a particular purpose? So the modern specialist, it starts out with a purpose, goes to people you serve, and pay it forward. What is that? It sounds like pay it forward, but where's the profit? Well, you have to believe that there is a particular payback over time if you actually define yourself in terms of who you serve rather than in terms of what you do. Perhaps trust is the key word. You have to trust, earn the trust over time. And trust is something that is a multifaceted construct, and in some societies it comes in different ways, shapes, or forms, but many times it starts with people you hang out with a lot, like your childhood friends. You learn who to trust and what they know, and who knows, who can help you, who will help you when you have a tough time. Or it can be built on family ties and family bonds, so you can actually decide to actually run a whole society. Some whole countries are big family bonds. But outside of that, how can you do it? In my case, education, if I'm going to earn trust of my students and serve them perhaps over life, I'm trying to stay connected with them also after they graduate. I need to teach them something they want to be learning. So I try to bridge the two, find an intersection. But to serve them truly well, I have to figure out, can that also be useful for them in their careers to do something good? And find the application. Where can they put this into practice? So instead of sending off my students on the train station to the destination in real life, I decided I'm going to go there before they arrive. So this summer I asked a famous entrepreneur, can I come and intern for you? His big digital marketing agency in New York. He said, 100%. I wanted to go to extreme in terms of learning what is the world my students are entering. What can I learn from them? And in order for me to prepare my students in a better way. I learned that not only were they good at social platforms of various kinds, but they used them to build networks and build trust and authenticity over time. That they were really at the edge of every platform and new platforms and old platforms alike, using the ones that work and experimenting with the new ones that emerge. And Gary also practices something he calls the cloud and dirt metaphor, which is that he has the 10,000 feet perspective at the same time as he's down in the nitty-gritty and learns the details of everything. He switches between the two. But more importantly, I found that all his employees thought the same way. They had a gearbox inside them where they actually switched between the broad view and the details in whatever they did. And not only that, they were good at, if they focused on one platform, they also tried to learn other things that related to that, because they needed to work with people in other departments, they needed to see how it made sense for the clients. So they were good at not just one thing. A T-shaped generalist is good at one thing and have a broad perspective. A pie-shaped is have two things and many things and a broad perspective. But now you have something that you actually know maybe many fields and get good at it. His team, Gary, as they are called, they were curious, they were driven, they were focused on achieving results for their clients and for Gary, but at the same time, they were happy. They were team players. And what struck me was that they embodied Gary's mantra of hustle with kumbaya. What I also noticed was that one of their employees, he was hired as a specialist in e-commerce, electronic commerce. At the same time, I asked him, how come that you as a specialist are listing under LinkedIn specialties 59 different ones? And he said, for me, it's essential to have a portfolio of skills. And not only that I abandon them and jump to new ones, but I continuously jump back and update my skills because they go stale otherwise. And in order for him to be a world-class specialist, he needed to see how it worked together with 58 other things. Also showing up in an authentic manner, in a human manner, is something that Gary shows very well. He's tweeting himself, but he's also showing up not like this buttoned-up executive, because today companies buy from companies not just with the best products and services and delivery times and price, but also from companies with executives they like, with employees they like, and can relate to. So try to be human. I believe in the future it will be seen as unprofessional to be too professional. So in my case, I'm coming back to campus and trying to teach what is the intersection between these three worlds in order for me to provide the maximum value to my students, my stakeholders. But for you, who are you going to serve, or for what purpose? What purpose drives you? Even if you're not a recent graduate or college student, in mid-career perhaps. The good news with new technology and change is when it comes out, if you dedicate the 24 first hours of a new platform that comes out on social media, for example, you can be the world's foremost expert in that. And it's an opportunity for all of us to make a difference for the people that we want to serve. But I think these frameworks will help you perhaps to look at what is the guiding light, what is the North Star that drives you, and how can you make a difference to your stakeholders. And that's it. Thank you. Thank you.